Morning, team. Morning.
Morning.
Now, just before we quickly open, what I want to do is if we actually spend 15 minutes on every item, we'll be here for 5.5 hours. So if we can keep it, when we go through the agenda, I just basically want to just confirm with you where your priorities are for which reports you want to focus on. And if we can also keep our questions focused and our comments even more focused. Now, I also want to break at, we'll go from till 11 and then take a 5-minute break or thereabouts. 12:30, have a 15-minute break for grab some kai, and then box on and finish as fast as possible, hopefully no later than 2. And I understand the Chief Executive needs to leave at 12:30. So on that basis, let's open the meeting with a karakia. Thank you, Sue.
Kia hora, te marino, kia whakapapa pūnāmu, te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, roho atua raha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa.
We've got 2 apologies, Councillor Penaora and Councillor Wilson-Collins. Can I have a mover, please?
I'll move. Second up.
Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Confirmation of the agenda. As I alluded to before the meeting, I think we'll just deal with the meat in the order. Are there any items people really want to concentrate on just for planning purposes? I have got closed landfills, whistleblower, treasury policy, health and safety, and insurance is probably the key areas. Are there any more areas open that people want to spend a bit more time on?
I think that covers it.
Councillor Mike, you've got...
No, I think that covers it fine. I had a number of queries.
Yeah, thank you for sending those through. I think that will assist the meeting. We've also got just a note that on the 6th of October at 1 p.m, we've got an online meeting where we will discuss the draft annual report as a committee before it goes to council, as well as the quarterly debtors report. So I move that we confirm the agenda for today. Do I have a seconder?
No.
Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Are there any conflicts of interest that need to be declared for decision? There are none noted. We've got first item 2.1, page 1, the minutes of the 8th of June. Do I have a mover?
I'll move.
Thank you. I'll second. Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Work programme, Sue, pages 11 to 16, item 3.1. Thank you, Sue.
Yes, there's nothing to comment here. If I'd kept to the programme, the items, we wouldn't have had such a large agenda, but it was just huge this time. So I'm hoping next time that there's no more than what's in our programme.
Okay, my only one comment I have on that one, in terms of the financial policies, I just wonder whether we've got them, is it possible to indicate when we will actually be seeing them rather than just those dots across the line would be useful, a useful addition. Okay. That would be my only comment. Any other comments?
Yes, I just ask, has provision been made in your planning for a big reduction income as a result of problems perhaps in China and the world at large?
Through the chair, this isn't to do with this agenda. So we haven't, we've just presented our annual plan, and no, we haven't made any adjustments for the farming community or that may not be able to pay their rates. Obviously, we have a provision for doubtful debts, and we'll be working with communities if they have difficulties.
Thank you. Any other comments? Can I have a mover that we note per the recommendation? Thank you. Seconder? Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Next item, 3.2, page 17 to 20. Welcome, Mr. Chief Executive. Sir. We'll take it as read.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. Look, take it as read. I know you've got a busy agenda today. I just want to make a couple of key points. This project is not the typical council project. We're contributing 200 of a 550k project for the marae. It was very time dependent. We live in a small district. There are a lot of conflicts that do occur from time to time. There are a considerable number of conflicts for this project. As staff, we were very aware of that. We made a mitigation plan to those conflicts. I tested with the chair of the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee his comfort with our plan, and he was comfortable with that as well. But in the interest of transparency and openness, because that's how we are as a council now as well, it was important that governance were made aware of these mitigation plans. I'm very happy where we're at. I'm comfortable. The contractor that's been put forward for this project is a trusted contractor that we've used before in one of our suppliers. So, and we've tested the contract price independently. That's come in correct. And we've got a quality assurance contract involved on the project as well. Because of the time dependency, we've gone ahead with the process.
Okay, thank you.
Just for your information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. So this is going, I see the conflict, everyone knows about conflict of interest from Marae and from staff as well. So one question maybe in two parts. One is it going to all to plan? Or is it because there will be otherwise inflationary costs and then the council may have to contribute more? Is it an ongoing assessment going on? And do we have similar projects in the council where we have put our neck in co-governance kind of situation? Or is it the only one?
So yes, it's going to plan, and that's what the contract's been awarded for. So there's the cost escalations, if there are any, are managed as part of that contract. We don't anticipate it. We want to get on and do the work, and we are starting that now to avoid any escalation as well. This is a unique project. It is part of our LTP though. It was in our LTP, so it is a part of the work program. I'm not aware of other projects that are similar to this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just further on to my questions, just that, I mean, I hadn't come across something like this before. So I am, and with knowing that it's in the LTP, I am presuming, relative to my question, that the KDC must provide all specifications. So that's clear. And ultimately, even though it's not funded by us, largely, the responsibility and risk presumably rests on our shoulders.
We are delivering the project through you, Mr. Chair. We are delivering the project, absolutely. And the reason we wanted to do that was to be able to manage that risk.
Yep.
And part of this report is managing that risk actually.
Yeah.
Yep. So we have control over it. But in saying that, it is on the marae land, so we can't ignore that. It is a partnership with the work that we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Sorry, I've just suddenly thought of one. Sorry, I should have. So the vested asset, the work done on the marae land will not be a vested asset of council. It will be the bit that's in the road reserve. It is be our vested asset. Okay. And my last question is, do you intend to do any formal reporting back to any council committee or council in terms of monitoring this project?
Well, we're hopeful it's going to get done pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Actually, but yeah, happy to.
I mean, to me, it should just go part of the normal capital works plan. Yeah.
Yeah. We report that to council.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. I'm happy to move the recommendation. Do I have a second? Thank you. All those, any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Next item, 3.3, 21 to 70, a bit of light reading. Welcome, Donna. Thank you. Take your report as read and the attachments.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
So just to get started. Obviously, the closed landfills are a significant risk with regards to climate change. We have budget as part of the current LTP to begin the risk assessments. These were meant to have got underway in January of this year. However, we were a little bit caught out with cyclones and pretty horrible weather. However, we have kicked them into gear now, and we are well underway at identifying the more higher risk sites and further actions that will be required to protect them sites. A couple of questions that I received from Councillor Howard around litigation risk to council. So I can't sit here with my hand on my heart and say that council won't be litigated against, because I don't know. There's not a lot of history around New Zealand. I have touched base with PDP, our consultants that provided the assessments, and they're not aware of any litigation as such that has been taken out on previous councils. All I can say is, provided we continue to monitor these sites as per our consent conditions, we should be fairly well protected, and with this additional work we're doing now, as far as identifying any potential further risk that we may need to address outside of the consents.
Yep, that's key.
You had another question around the LiDAR data that we have used to put together this information. It's a useful first start for the team to start gathering the information, and definitely in the higher risk of sites that have been identified as a result of that, using that data, there will be some more accurate estimates like levels completed and assessments completed. There won't be a total reliance on that data.
Well, that's good, if I may, Mr. Chair. I mean, my point of concern here is that a response that we've had via Mr. Day that NRC don't actually raise issue with the LiDAR. It's up to anybody involved to go to them to challenge if the records are correct. And when we look at what they're suggesting about the area around our Brown Road dam, I think that it does raise some concerns. And I'm not sure where others of our 12 close landfills, you've mapped them out by whether they're close to water and rivers and things, but whether any of the others would be in that vicinity of potentially a flood-prone flood hazard based on this NRC data. And we've got to take their guidance. So, I challenge the accuracy, I guess, of NRC data, and we just need to be keep good surveillance on, I think, as we go through. Yeah.
Sorry, just following on to that. So are we taking any potential things to mitigate the risk of flooding because Brown Road was flooded in Gabriel, wasn't it? That area was all flooded. So it's not a potential, it has happened, it will happen, and the dam is there. So are we taking any future course of action not to mitigate this risk?
So are you referring to Brown Road?
Yeah, the dam and everything, yeah.
I can't answer that question, I'm sorry. That's
But, okay, so would be at some point you'll come back? Is there any room for mitigating this risk? Because it's a big risk, I think.
That sounds like it's almost a separate paper around wastewater rather than landfills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was a link to our major wastewater scheme as well. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Donna, you probably can't answer this, but so a number of these consents expire around 2026, sorry, 2035, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Right, I won't hopefully be around by then. In terms of this, my role here, I don't think, the question is what happens after that? Do we have to renew them again? Or is that they just sort of, it's an ongoing consent, so the liability will always sit with the equivalent of the territorial local authority?
We will have to continue to renew them, that's correct. So, there is a life cycle for leachate and some of the higher risks in the landfill. I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And I know at this stage, NRC are reviewing some of the minor, smaller landfills and the risk factors. And there is some talk that they may take away the need for consents in the future. They would be very low risk ones that are inland, away from all other risks, very small, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think the last thing we want is another Fox, right? It doesn't do us no one any good, let alone the environment, all right?
Of interest that you guys, the committee here might be keen to hear is that Kaipara is the only council in North that has budget for this work at the moment. Are the only council that's considering doing the risks, looking into this. So I was told by the other councils.
Yeah, I mean, I see this as a nationwide problem.
Yes.
Right? As a child, I remember going to the Invercargill tip in the Oreti estuary, right?
I remember that well.
So to me, it's probably from Cape Reinga to Bluff that we've actually got all the problems, right? And I think this is proactive. I've noted that in our risk register, this is also an item on our risk register, and maybe we might want to have a little bit more discussion when we come to that and public excluded. So we've identified the risk. We're going to address it through the LTP process. Crystal ball, any idea of how much we're likely to, and it's crystal ball, so I'm not expecting it to be a great deal of accuracy at this stage. Any ideas?
So just going off the Kaiwaka full assessment that's been completed, I would say with the coastal sites, the 3 of them that have been identified, we could be looking at around about $500,000 each to just remedy, install seawalls, that type of situation, much like the recently consented Bickerstaff Road landfill sites right on the edge of the harbour. And we installed a large rock wall protection works around that. So they've identified that now as very, very low risk because it's very well protected. And that was somewhere around 450,000 for that contract. And the other ones will be just minor works.
Okay. All right.
Very crystal ball though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
On top of it.
Yeah, and I think that's positive. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Donna. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Howard and Councillor Nash. All those in favour, please say aye. Our next one is our policies and bylaw update. I think we've got Shirley online. Shireen, right, sorry, my bad. What happens when I'm trying to speed read?
Kia ora. Oops,
Kia ora. Can we?
sorry, Mike.
Oh,
Sorry.
right. Thank you for your report. We'll take it as read. Are there any highlights you want to bring to the committee?
Thank you, Chair. No, there's no particular highlights other than as per the report, there are a couple of other policies being reported to this committee at the same meeting. So I believe they're on the agenda. They're coming up on the agenda. The only thing that I thought to add to this is the purpose of this reporting is so that the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee has an oversight of the policies that are coming to council or not coming to council, sorry, I should rephrase that are council's policies and that they are being reviewed in a timely fashion or a best practice fashion or in accordance with statutory requirements. So if the committee were to have any queries regarding the substantive nature or the content of the policies. I am the owner of some of these policies, but most of them not in terms of the content. So I'd be happy to pass on any queries regarding the content of policies to the policy owners. And if the committee wanted to request a report on a particular policy in terms of the substantive nature and or to bring forward a review, then I would pass that on to the report owner.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I actually like this report from a compliance perspective to make sure we're not dropping the ball in terms of having policies that get out of date. The ones that worry me are probably more the bylaws. I know one or two councils dropped the ball on their liquor licensing, so on their bylaws on liquor exclusion areas. I can't remember the name of it, right? And they had to go and start from scratch again. So it's those sort of policy bylaws that also concern me. But what I'm hearing is there's nothing that's due for renewal in the next period of time. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. So the alcohol control bylaw is on the schedule in the report, and that is there is a briefing scheduled for that in November and an item to council in December. So that's in train to meet the legal review requirements. There are no other bylaws that are urgently, well, not urgently, but there are no other bylaws with a review date in the first quarter of next year. So there are some bylaws that are coming up, but nothing on the immediate radar for this financial year.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions from the committee? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thanks, Shireen. Just in page 1 of your report, you refer to the review of the Mangawhai Endowment Lands account. We had some conversations around that the last month, I think it was, about taking funds that weren't available from the revenue. And I said that I wanted to see some information on the calculations if we were to make an adjustment to the policy such that actually didn't average the cost of debt and the deposit rates, but we actually paid the fund what our cost of debt was. Have you got some numbers on that you're able to dig up for us so we can just have a look at how that policy might end up looking?
Through the chair, as that is one of the policies that I don't own. I'm not across the content of that policy. I can see from here that Sue's writing notes regarding that, and I'm sure that she can pass that on to Melissa.
Okay,
regarding your query, and that will be reported back through those channels as that review of that policy proceeds.
Okay, thanks.
Comments?
Just through the chair, it's minor. A change in 0.001% or something won't make much difference to the money that
Is it that close? Is it?
will be. Yeah, it's not going to be.
So our cost of debt is sufficiently low. It's the same as a commercial.
No, it's not the same as the commercial deposit, but we could go through that and have a look. But I don't think on the value that we're talking about, $5 million. I don't know that's going to make that much. And it's not even 5 million because I think part of that's rentals. But
well, it'd be interesting to see it anyway, if that's okay. What those differences are.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just have one quick question on this, and it is a matter of clarification, Shireen, as much as anything else. We have under your schedule, table 1, a number of policies, etc., that have review dates very much in the past, going back. So can we understand why they're still there? I know that, for instance, the first one, Citizens Award Policy, come to the Awards and Grants Committee in September, but its review was due on 26th of the 6th, 21. Is this, why is this? Why is it, not been reviewed at due date? And that are in the past?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. This does sometimes happen. Again, it would be the report author's role to talk about why the review was delayed. I would remind the committee that for all, I guess, for all non-statutory review, all non-statutory policies, the review date is set as an elective review period just for best practice purposes and to remind staff. It would be speculative of me to talk to why there was such a delay in this policy being reviewed. All I can say is that all policy owners are, and has been reported previously to the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee. I undertook a program of review last year to identify all the policies, identify the policy owners. So we have had quite a considerable tidy up, and there's now more of an internal system to follow up and ensure that policy owners are aware and understanding of their responsibilities around reviews, and that and that is why also some of these policies are coming through to you right now, because people are incorporating the review process into their work program.
Okay, thanks. I just wonder whether, in fact, we have more appropriate comments in the status update rather than no change of status since last update, when you've got policies that are, well over a year overdue. Just to be more current, that's all. And I appreciate it's not all not all in your hands, but I just think as an overall view on this is that we should be current.
Yep. Mr. Chief Executive.
If I get to sneak in here, Shreen's correct, we're doing a lot more reporting here and tightening up the process behind all of this. And some of those policies will boil down to workload.
Yep.
Actually, if I'm really honest with you. But we're well aware of the policies we need to review, and we'll get in onto it. But it has been brought down to workload at the moment.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Good point.
Yeah, and I think this is why you're on your feet, Mr. Chief Executive, right? I think Councillor Mike's actually raised a really good point. So maybe next time in 3 months' time, if we can have a bit of an update on those ones that are behind the 8 ball. I'm actually, to be honest, not too concerned about the non-statutory ones slipping because of other things, but we don't want to let them go so they become so out of date they're useless. What I would be really keen next time is we've got an LTP next year, and there are a number of policies that have to be actually reviewed as part of the LTP by 30th of June. So I probably want to see at our next meeting what's the process for those policies that need to be adopted prior to the adoption of the LTP, particularly the revenue and financing policy, etc.
Through the chair, can I respond to that? When
Absolutely.
When this reporting started to the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee, it was outlined that to avoid double reporting, all of the policies, all of the revenue, finance, etc., and the financial policies that are reviewed in conjunction with the LTP will not be reported to the Audit, Risk and Finance. They're being reported through to the LTP briefing process, because all of the staff who are involved in those policies are very aware of their review requirements in relation to the LTP, and they're being reviewed as part of that package.
Right, okay. So they won't say, just clarifying, I don't expect to see them to come to this committee, but it'd be nice to know that they're actually in train to be done.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, they're actually absolutely in train. We've got a project plan for the LTP. We have specific LTP briefings, and we know which policies need to be reviewed and are being reviewed for the LTP. Also noting we're doing it, hopefully doing LTP light this year.
Yes. So yeah, very light, yes.
But lightish.
Lightish, yes. Taking advantage of that little bit of legislation, huh? Although the Order in Council don't totally agree with that approach. Right. No further comments? Do I have a mover for the recommendation? I'll move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mike. All those, no further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you very much. Next item is our item 3.5, resource consenting in the Kaikoura District Council review. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, councillors.
On page 73 to 88.
just give a very brief summary. It's a fairly brief report. But yes, this is a report on the findings of Mark Farnworth's audit of council's resource consent processes. So it just summarises the findings and the recommendations, and then on page 74 and 75, so it's got a table of scheduling the actions to implement the various recommendations. And ultimately, this is all about activating growth. So it is a helpful report to get us there. In terms of the key findings, just on page 74 top, there was some criticism of KDC's processes. We've got to take that on the chin and make improvements. Also noted that the Barker and Associates report done in 2019 is still relevant today. Comments on the operative district plan saying it's not fit for purpose. And in terms of some of the communication that council staff, council planners have with applicants, Mark is recommending we're more upfront in terms of if something isn't going to stack up, we say to the applicants right from the start and don't lead them down a garden path in terms of cost and stress and etc. But also being open-minded and focusing on solutions and giving our customers options. Also finds Northern Transport Alliance's implementation of the Safe System Assessment audits. These are the transportation traffic planning device to assess safety effects. Mark is commenting that they have been introduced without real justification or Section 32 analysis. Mike also finds that the firefighting rules need to be reviewed, and also presentation with iwi is probably over the top and needs reconsideration. So just turning quickly to the table with the recommendations and what we're going to do about it. The first one is about revisiting the Barker and Associates recommendations. The only one there that hasn't been implemented is the procurement of consultants. As councillors will be aware, we've gone through that process now. The contracts for the various resource consent consultants are now being signed off by the CEO. And so that will complete that one. Just noting some of the Barker's report recommendations are ongoing in nature. So we just got to make sure that, they might have been implemented, say, 2 years ago, just got to check they haven't dropped off the radar. So we will do a check of all Barker's recommendations and make sure they're implemented on an ongoing basis and reporting to the director on those recommendations and implementation. The next one is really about making sure that the consultants, as you know, we're highly dependent on consultants at the moment. Hopefully that will come down over time once we recruit staff, but making sure they're on board and their attitude is tuned into activating growth. The CEO's memo of the 8th of June has been relayed to consultants, and there'll be ongoing performance management of consultants to make sure they're delivering on that memo.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, with absolute consistency of outcomes as far as we can make them.
Yes, yes. Then the next one is district plan. Obviously, the working party is well underway and making progress on that one. Again, bespoke approach to planning, that's with the working party. Mark has suggested that the CEO invite the Mayor and Deputy Mayor to an annual staff meeting. Sounds like a good idea, but I need to leave that one to the CEO in terms of timing for that. And I'm sure he'll discuss that with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor. Next one was the NTA comment. The NTA's safe system audits. Now we've met on senior management and the CEO, including the CEO, we met with NTA on the 30th of August. We went over that issue. We're going to establish actual triggers for the safe system audits, triggers when they are actually required, making sure they are only required for really more significant applications that generate significant adverse traffic effects. It'll also provide information to applicants upfront about that, so there's no surprises, and make that information available on our website. Also implement a service level agreement with the NTA to make sure they understand and follow up on what our requirements are in terms of timeframes, and also we do our part as well. Next one is about fire, the fire side of things. Again, that's with the working party. And finally is the consultation with iwi. I think that is about just refining our criteria for sending applications to iwi. At the moment, when we do our information checks, we use criteria to determine whether they go to iwi or not. They get 2 days to tell us whether they're interested in the application or not, and if they are, 10 days to provide us with comments. I think it's just about amending our process for that. So I don't think that's too big a deal. And we've got to deal with it sensitively to keep our iwi on site. So that is it in terms of recommendations, and there's just the recommendation is for the report to be noted, for Mark's report to be noted, and we'll continue to report progress on implementing the recommendations. Happy to answer questions.
Okay. Councillor Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on that iwi matter, is that will you come back to council just to, and it probably relates to all the other elements, but just to affirm when all of those points have been, a decision is made, and whether we need to have an input in those decisions, but that they are enacted?
Yes, no problems with that whatsoever.
So, I mean, the concern is, and whilst you say, and quite rightly, that, you know, we've got the sensitivity of our relationship with iwi, at the same time, we've got sensitivities with our relationships with ratepayers, and if they're getting ripped,
yes,
that's just not on.
No, understand.
So through the chair, just so, because you did put a question in beforehand, so how we monitor this is it comes on to the past audit recommendations. So we take all those recommendations, put them on there, and as we resolve them, you'll see them ticked off, completed or not. So they're always, so that we make sure that things don't drop off.
Well, that's good, because the supplementary, Mr. Chair, is that on my point about there are reports, and I've been, you know, come across them myself in my short time, that, you know, don't seem to end up getting air. They're done, there's huge expense, and somehow or another, they just end up in the bottom drawer. So, I mean, I want to ensure that there is a process, is that every report does actually come to the surface and gets discussed and decisions made, and we do move on positively with decisions.
Executive.
Point up, Chair. If I can.
Absolutely.
Through you, so I'm not aware of what reports you're talking about, but, you know, we've been quite consistent in this organisation because of history, that we're quite open and transparent where we need to improve. This is an open meeting as an example, and we have consistently reported back previously the Barker's report as an example, so that this committee and the council has oversight of the actions and what we're doing with them. So in the previous term, that Barker's report was reported virtually nearly every meeting, and I think it was twice yearly perhaps, on the progress and where we were at. And what Lloyd is saying here is we'll do the same for this too.
Okay, appreciate it, and I'm happy to take, you know, the discussions offline, but I did specifically mention that, you know, on the Mangawhai wastewater disposal, going back to 2006, there'd been something like 22, 23 reports done. Some had just not seen the light of day, for whatever reasons. And, you know, I know that there was another one that came up about roading to do with Alamar recently through NTA. I don't understand why some of them.
So through the chair. So some of that's because of staff movements and that relates to capital expenditure projects, doesn't relate to audits. We have been on to that for years. So.
Thanks. Well, okay, that's fine.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, can I just say from a staff perspective and, you know, an operational perspective, we're very aware of the past in history. This organisation is very different to what the organisation was at the time. Things have changed quite a bit. We're very open and transparent, and we're very aware of the need for elected members and governance to understand what's going on with the work programme and how we're reporting on it.
Thanks.
I think just to reiterate that, all right, I actually crossed out one of my notes because all these recommendations will be going on the report that we will get, so we can actually monitor as a committee, monitor the achievement of that, and we'll talk about that next time. Right? Those are achievement. I had Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Chair.
Here.
Just a quick one. One, you mentioned that you are looking to hire staff for resource consenting. What percentage is at the moment versus staff versus consultants? Do you have some?
Yep, I can give you the
What
stats on.
roughly would it be?
I can give you quite precise stats because I looked at them just the other day.
10% or is it 50%?
It's 60 for the last financial year.
60?
For 22-23 financial year, it was 60%. And at the moment, first couple of months, it's risen to 77%.
So 77% consultants.
Yeah, that's consultant use.
So it is consultant based at the moment. And they just don't.
And because we're now down to only two, we had another recent resignation, unfortunately. So we've got down to two planners internally, which creates 4 vacancies all up. But having said that, we've just advertised 3 positions from principal planner, senior planner and planner. And we think we're being pretty competitive in terms of what we can offer. So fingers crossed that will provide some results for us.
That's good to know. Just on to that, I do see NTA involved in a consenting process as well, and we don't know what future going to be. But in terms of the working party, this consultant Mark Fransworth was engaged to review something which was done in 2019, and he literally has said that he endorses most of the finding, but he has suggested some powers or actions for working party. So my question is, what strength the working party will have in those negotiations? Would it be just a waste of time? Because it's something which is legally documented. Is it things like that? So do we have risk of poaching or getting into or poking into an area which is not ours as a concept?
So through the chair, what it's about is the district plan, and the working party is reviewing the district plan. So although the audit was on resource consents, what Mark Farnsworth has found is that some of the issues relate to some of the statements in the district plan. So we have to look at potentially changing those. So there
will be legal costs involved in engaging lawyers on many things.
There's going to be anyway. The district plan is going to be huge.
Thank you.
That was sorry, Deputy Mayor, you had a question on.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I really just comment on what was kind of related to what Councillor Howard was alluding to before. We've had the Barker and Associates report, and now we've got the Farnsworth report, which has brought up some further things, and have full faith in Lloyd. Now he's in the role there to monitor those as we go along. But I don't think it's just a matter of having these points and ticking them off and then leaving them behind. I think there's always room that you always have the potential for slippage back to old patterns. And so we actually need to be quite vigilant in periodically checking that we are actually doing all of those things on an ongoing basis rather than ticking them off one off. It's just my little comment there.
Okay. My comment is on the district plan review, right? Goodness knows what's going to happen with RMA reform, right? But my concern is that's a huge project and has significant risk, right, associated with it. Now, I'm not saying we actually play in the district plan space, that's way above my pay station. But my concern is that we're relying on a change to the district plan to resolve some of these issues? Well, crystal ball out, Mr. Chief Executive. Right? When would you potentially see that based on the current RMA legislation, right? Being made notified, let alone being operative?
So,
Your crystal ball, I'm not going to hold you to it, but it's,
no,
I think that's an important discussion that, you know, when we come to these things, we're actually waiting for the district plan, but that could be how long before we even notify it?
So, through you, Mr. Chair, so we did do a draft, exposure draft of the district plan prior to the election and had that publicly consulted on. And the new council came in, they've got a different sort of a slant to things, and that's fine. And we've been working with the new council since the election to get their input, so your input into that district plan review. After a few briefings, the council's agreed to create a district plan working party, and the working party has met twice to date and are actively working through the district plan work program to get to a place that we can notify. You asked for a timeframe. I can't give you that timeframe at all. We have to continue to work through that with the district plan working party. My hope, though, is given that the feedback has been consistent and we have fast forwarded the district plan review process for two reasons. One, because the community have given us consistent feedback that the district plan is not fit for purpose. First point. Second point is the legislation is problematic at the moment. Whilst the two acts have been passed already, if there is a change in government and if it is a national government that comes in, they have actively promised to repeal that legislation within 100 days, okay? So we were keen to get the district plan notified prior to any legislation really changing. However, we're taking a more measured approach with the council on that. It's a big topic, it's a big expense, and there's a big need, and everybody's well aware of that.
You didn't answer you said you hope to notify it, but you didn't actually give a...
I'm at the mercy of the district plan working party.
Sorry?
I'm at the mercy of the district plan working party working through that process.
What are we talking, 25, 26? Come on.
Haven't we, through the chair, I think we've just made a media announcement that it was 24.
24? Okay. Right, okay. Sorry, I don't read your media.
No, no, it's not my area, but
I just think, I think the point that arises from what you're asking there about, you know, things need to be done from this report and when are they going to be done? I think there's two parts to that. Yes, there may be fixes in a proposed plan, but there may also be fixes via improved interpretation of the operative plan. So it might not necessarily be that all of these things have to wait until we've actually got a proposed plan out or even a new operative plan.
Yep. Yeah, interpretations are interesting. We'll talk about that later, isn't it? In our next item as well. Anyway, all right. Any further comments?
I'll just make one there. We can say saw an inherent risk in rushing a plan through properly developed. So that's why we formed the working group, just to make sure we fill our place where we thought it was more secure for the district going forward.
All right, you've got to get your district plan right. There have been many proposed district plans have never been made operative because they've had too many flaws or not enough agreement with the community of what they actually want. So that's district planning is problematic. Well, challenging, I would say. Challenging at best. I would say problematic is probably the wrong word, but problematic. It's challenging to balance the needs of the community and developers, etc.
Yeah.
Right. Any further comments? Thank you, Lloyd, Chief Executive. Can I have a mover for the recommendation, please? Councillor Ash, I have a seconder. Councillor Mike, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Our next item is our fraud and whistleblower policies.
Can I nick your power off you for a bit? I'm running a bit low on my charger.
Yeah.
Are you charged?
You can, push you can.
Good morning.
Catherine?
Good morning. I'll take the report as read. As in summary, the fraud and whistleblowing policies are existing policies. Until now, they have been, and this committee requested that they be converted to council adopted policies. They've also been reviewed for content, format, etc. And so I'm here today to present to you the updated reviewed policies to get your feedback, answer any questions and seek your direction to take it to the next step.
Okay.
And present to council.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the committee? I'm sorry, I'm going to be mean and horrible, right?
Okay.
All right. I've unfortunately had to administer one or two of these in my, all right. One of, and just from history, right? One of the things that worries me is that I'm aware of a number of frauds that have happened in local government, and the person has been terminated as the most expedient way of dealing with that rather than actually frauding or involving the police or FSO. I wonder, and that's not implicit in the policy that a fraud is proven, that there's an automatic default to send the file to the police and let them make a decision as to prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fraud policies now actually have that in it as a matter of default. So it's not the chief executive, right, making that decision, but it's actually the police whether they actually proceed. Now, 9 times out of 10, I was involved in a fraud case elsewhere in a council. The police said, we're too busy. Went to the SFO, they said, below our scale, right? So to me, but I think there is a real risk that someone undertakes fraud, it's proven, it's there, they get terminated and they turn up somewhere else and they create another fraud because no one decided to take any action, right? You know, that to me is a significant risk, not for the council, but for the community as, you know, as a whole. So do you want, whether you want to comment on that?
I think it's a sensible suggestion to include that in the policy, that would be the part of the process, that any instances of fraud would be, as you described this process that you went through, that you would refer those to the police and then it would be up to the police or the Serious Fraud Office to make a decision about if they wanted to take any action.
So,
Certainly look at that.
And also I've actually sat on a webinar with the SFO. If there is a case of fraud of a reasonable nature, not someone taking $5 out of the petty cash or using council's assets inappropriately, they also provide assistance as well. And they help gain the appropriate evidence should a prosecution be required, because that's sometimes one of the concerns is that the evidence hasn't been gained appropriately and disqualified when a prosecution is undertaken. So I don't know whether that needs to be in the policy or the procedure, but that's something that's, I think, of worth noting.
Yep.
That it's more than just getting a, well, I like chartered accountants and auditors sometimes. I think you might need to, I would recommend you change the policy that an appropriate skilled investigator be appointed to undertake that review. Now that can then give you and the chief executive the appropriate mechanism to actually go to other people other than what is suggested in the policy.
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Are there any other comments? Let's hope it doesn't happen here, but it happens way too often, unfortunately.
Well, there are presumably very good learnings, as you've highlighted, that we can easily follow.
Are there any other comments? Okay. Just the recommendation.
Yes.
Currently, we've got a recommends. I would actually move that we actually recommend the fraud and whistleblower policies as amended be sent to council for adoption. I'm happy to move.
Second.
that.
Councillor Ron, any further discussion? I
See the.
yeah, I can, if you want to flip them to me,
Yeah.
I'm happy to put the appropriate words in, plagiarise from other councils, obviously.
That's an offence too.
Sorry?
That's offence as well, isn't it?
No, plagiarism is the highest form of compliment. Right, they're all public documents, councillor. But the number of times I've seen my policies replicated around the countryside in the early days was quite amazing. All right. All right. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Treasury policy. Thank you, Sue. A little bit of more light reading.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this Treasury policy is due for renewal. We look at it every 3 years. It's basically how we manage gives us how we manage our investments and our liabilities, our debt. And so last time we had it reviewed by PwC, they did a good job, but what they did was it's a bit more corporate, and they so I've simplified. All I've done is simplify it. I've put everything that was to do with liabilities in one place, everything to do with investments in another, and then a little bit at the front about the procedures and the process. Because it was really hard as a staff member to actually use if you don't have it all in the one place. So I've done that. The other minor changes I've made is on point 4.5, advances to community organisations. I was asked to put in a policy change about that, or put something in. So I put in just over, if we do a loan to community organisations, that we do so over 30 years, principal and interest. And that's with reference to the museum. You may remember they came to, or you won't, some of you will remember, that they did come to council last year, and they wanted us to forgive their debt rather than pay it back. And they were at that time only repaying interest. And the council said, okay, let's give them longer to repay it, maybe over 30 years, come back to us. And so I've incorporated that into the council policy. It's not going to be a big thing. We don't actually give that much money out to, they're the only people that we've loaned money. And we also have a guarantee to the Mangawhai Restoration, Harbour Restoration Group as well. Apart from that, yeah, we report on the ratios that we need to meet on a quarterly basis, which is what the next report's about. Any questions?
Yeah, Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, the investment policy, and I'm not aware of what policy the other councils adopt. I'm never a big fan of local government investing in swaps and all, and we have a little bit of exposure. I think the policy should be safer investment whilst, and not anything which is very, very speculative should not be part of our investment portfolio.
So through the chair, we have swaps, and that's recommended by our by PwC.
Yeah.
So we take, that's what our rules are. We don't do anything speculative.
But maybe we need a second point. That's what I'm trying to say. How many councils in the country are ending in swaps? Being an ex-bank of ANZ, which had the KDC account, is public information. I don't think it is a great idea for this council who had a history of financial hardships.
Okay, so through the chair, swaps are to minimise or to set the interest rate. They are they're used, I think, by most councils or by most businesses just to fix your costs. So Philip, you might.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just the majority of councils who have large amounts of debt use swaps, right? The councils that I'm aware of that use swaps get professional advice before they undertake a swap. The idea behind a swap is totally not speculative. Absolutely, and speculation is prohibited not only in the policy, but under legislation. So you can't use swaps to play the market. Only people with serious money who like to put their money at risk want to do that. We're risk averse. The idea behind a swap is to give certainty over interest rates over a period of time where you can only predominantly borrow on the floating market. So the idea behind a swap is you can lock in, give certainty to your community. Yes, we believe that 5% is an appropriate level, just for an example. And if the market was to go up, you'd only be paying 5%. But the contrary to that is, if the market is to fall, then unfortunately you can't actually reduce your interest rate because you're trying to give certainty to the community. That comes at a cost. And that's the decision that needs to be understood is, do you want certainty or do you want volatility?
I think volatility, I would like to personally, because we have to go with the flow. If it's falling, we should enjoy the benefit of the fruit.
That's, yeah, I mean, yeah.
The whole
Ideally.
right? We should, yeah.
Look, I hear where you're coming from because we've actually had for the last however many number of years, we've seen falling interest rates. Now, all of a sudden, we've actually seen rapidly rising interest rates. I don't think we're actually likely to see interest rates dramatically falling in New Zealand for quite some considerable time. Now, I'm living by the crystal ball, and those who live by the crystal ball tend to learn to eat ground glass. But the issue for me is it's about this, the idea behind swaps is about giving certainty in community so you can plan your projects, and that's a council decision. Yeah, Councillor Mike, you're busy nodding.
No, I'm listening and agreeing. You know, I think that to Councillor Nair's point is that it's that balance, and you know, there is no system out there that will protect you totally, as I understand it, both ways. It's ideal that we get the benefit that we're not ending up paying the higher rates, but there isn't a facility for that at the moment.
There's a cost as well.
Yeah.
Well, there's more risk involved also by not doing it.
Can I just ask Sue, just while we're talking about this, the policy says how much maximum of your debt can actually be secured by swap. So it's not 100% of the debt, is it? Just, I'm just trying to find it in your policy.
We don't do it to 100%.
No, you don't, yeah.
At any time. I'm not sure if it does.
It's a little bit like your KiwiSaver policy, you spread your risk, you know.
Yep, and that's the whole idea too, is if you actually look at the policy, the idea behind the policy, it actually puts the amount of interest and debt you can actually hold in any, what I refer to as one bucket. So you've got your short term, your 0 to 3, your 3 to 5, doesn't go beyond 5, does it for your interest rates? Some councils did for a while. You could get 10 or 15-year swaps for a while when they were years ago. So again, that also, like Mayor Craig has said, you're actually spreading your risk because of the policy. So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Okay, thank you.
So I've got, unfortunately dealt with both sides of these policies before. I've got a couple of questions. On page 116, page 5 of the policy, you're talking about council's internal appointed legal counsel must sign off full documentation for all new borrowings. I don't have a problem with new borrowings, but refinancing and investment structures. Don't have a problem with investment structures, but I have a little bit of a problem with refinancing. If you've got a debt, and I'm being pedantic here, if you've got a debt that's on a 90-day rollover, technically that's a refinancing. So are you expecting your legal counsel to sign that rollover off? So to me, I think we just need clarification of what we mean by refinancing within that clause of 3.3.
Okay.
Look, I've got no problem when you're taking out a new loan facility, but what are we actually, and the other question I have is we talk about in the policy our current ratio, our liquid ratio. Right? I think that needs to be defined within the policy. I'll tell you why. Because your liquid ratio should also, it's not actually in the accounting standard, right? Open to interpretation. And that does provide you with potentially a bit more detail, and maybe just whether you actually want to define that within the policy. I had an argument in the previous council where we actually had a reasonably large facility, so we were counting that as cash. And when we did our annual report, they said you didn't meet your liquidity because you didn't have enough cash to repay. And I go, you didn't read you didn't take into account our unused bank facility. And they go, well, what's your justification for that? And I said, it's in your policy. So they actually had to agree with it. But without it being in your policy, you might just want to check that. I'm not expecting you to do it now. Could have flicked it to you.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Because also the liquidity that's required in our policy is actually better than what is required from LGFA.
Yeah.
So, and we say that in our management report to you.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to put it in there.
Yeah, I think it's a belts and braces just to protect.
Okay, so I can do that. So that case with the resolution, if there's no other questions apart from, I think I did have a question from councillor Howard on
4.6.
Yeah, on it was the local government funding agency. I think as to what's the risk of that, really, isn't it? And really, it's guaranteed by all the by most of the members in the council. That's when you join it, you have to guarantee.
Conversely, we become part of the guarantor as well, don't we?
Yeah.
I've had a lot of emails from, I don't want to use the word conspiracy theorists, but a lot of people in the community really upset about LGFA because they see it as a huge risk. And whether that is or not, it'd be interesting to.
I've for a previous council who wasn't a guarantor, I did quite a bit of work actually understanding the protection mechanisms that LGFA have in place to ensure that they can actually meet all their liabilities as they fall due. It's substantial, and it's actually not. It's public knowledge. The biggest risk for LGFA is the Three Waters, because if the government set up a new water agency, a lot of the will actually be transferred to that. Now, I think that's something I'm sure LGFA are being kept awake at night. And again, that's not a big risk, because the issue is the risk for LGFA is if a council fails to pay its debt back. All councils that borrow through LGFA have to have a debenture trust deed. That trust deed allows for, if a council defaults, for a commissioner to be appointed, and a commissioner then has the ability to set a targeted to collect the amount of debt outstanding from the ratepayers across the whole of territorial local authority or the regional council, depending on what they are. So if the people don't, right? So maybe that's the concern that people have, is if a council was to fail, then the ratepayers are actually liable.
Yeah.
But you're liable anyway. Yeah. So that's the protection. In my analysis, the biggest risk that I had would be that if Auckland Council area was unpopulated and the land had no value. That would be the biggest risk for LGFA. So Auckland area had a catastrophic volcano or something like that, and it couldn't. Sorry?
Very low risk.
Oh, well, if that happened, New Zealand, LGFA would be the least of our worries.
It won't be there then.
Well, I did that analysis because of the security that's in place.
No, that's
And,
good. Yeah.
and since time began, there was only one other council that actually had to appoint, couldn't pay its debts, and that was Coromandel. Sir James Coromandel in the 1930s as a result of the Depression.
Okay.
So what's the attraction of us, just of curiosity, to go to LGFA anyway, and there's so many funding sources? Why we have to get involved in LGFA?
Can I suggest we have that debate when we talk about the LGFA annual report, because you'll actually see the benefits of LGFA in that report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify my question, it might be really minor, but it was that those words were contributing additional equity, the risk that we might, who knows what amount that might be, but, if, and you take that point, as you're talking about with Three Waters, is there a risk of it being a significant amount? And we can't foresee that.
No, the amount of, can I just,
Yeah.
right? The amount that the council will be required to pay for additional equity would only be if you're a shareholding, and it would only be to your uncalled capital, which I think, you a shareholder?
No.
You're not a shareholder, okay?
Yeah.
It's not like risk pool.
Okay. Yep. That clarifies it. That's good. So there's no risk.
Yeah, and the government are also a shareholder
Yep.
in LGFA. There's no risk from a council if you're not a shareholder,
Not a shareholder.
being asked for additional capital. I'm happy to move the recommendation
And
With
with potential change.
with minor amendments, okay?
Yep.
By the way, it doesn't actually need to be included in the long-term plan anymore,
No,
okay?
I see that.
Yeah, you don't actually have to do it, so that's your, and can be, so that it can be, I'm happy with the word can be,
Okay.
all right? I'm happy to move, do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor, Mayor, sorry, whoops, almost demoted you there for a minute. Mayor Craig, all those in favour, please say aye. Our Treasury Management Report.
Julia Lee has just joined us as Financial Services Manager.
Oh, welcome.
Welcome.
Kia ora.
Will be nice for your first meeting, okay?
Thank you very much.
Right. Your Treasury Report, thank you. We'll take it as read. Any key highlights, key changes since you prepared your report?
No, just I would like to point out that there is a minor error in the table for the funding and liquidity risk position. So that was the attachment A. It states in the report that for the 3 to 7 year position, the compliance is yes. It should be no.
And just to clarify, it's for the same reason that we're
Yeah.
about the interest rate, and we're unsure about Three Waters. The actual is 24%, whereas it's supposed to be between 3 and 7 years, 25 to 85%. So we're only out by 1%.
Yes.
It's to do with the fact that we've invested millions and they come due, 10 or 15 million comes due early next financial year.
So we should be meeting our requirements in terms of compliance with the policy from next year when Three Waters disappears, if it disappears.
Well, I think you've got a pretty high chance of it
Yes.
disappearing, considering you're an entity A.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. But other than that, we're in a strong financial position. We've got 123% liquidity. We currently have 44 million in external loans through LGFA. At the moment, we're still working through we're finalising our year-end position. So we're still stating that as at 30th of June 2022, the Three Waters loans were 45 million. We will have those debt figures finalised in the foreseeable future. We're nearing the end now of our year-end processes. So, but yes, otherwise, I'm open to taking questions.
Any questions?
Just Mr. Chair, a matter of clarification there, thanks. You mentioned there that, God, I'm gonna forget, 45 million. The Three Waters loans were 45 million?
That as at 30th of June 2022.
2022,
So I'll just clarify for Julia. So 44 millions are external loans.
yeah.
We have our current loan total is actually 54 million, of which Three Waters is the majority.
Yeah.
It will be, I think it's 45 million,
45.
maybe a bit more than that.
I was looking at the 44 here.
We might have about $5 million in loans left at the end of this financial year. It will,
That isn't,
the 1st of July, I should say, because that's the transfer date, I think.
so presumably, all things being equal, that 45 million is what would be paid back or paid to us by entity A, all things being equal.
So through the chair, what is happening is, my understanding is they are not going to pay them all back on day one, but we haven't had confirmation of that. What they will do is, as they come due, they will pay them back, and they haven't said what happens to the swaps. Who's going to be the costs of that, if there's any costs or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was our strategy in terms of actually shortening up our debt. We didn't actually want to have longer term debt because we wanted to be paid out of that sooner rather than later. If you remember, we had that discussion, was it 12 months ago, I remember? Yeah. Councillor Ash, you got a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on that, I'm looking at attachment interest rate risk position, and you rightly said that we should put more debt in the lower bracket. Now, the lowest bracket for 0 to 36 month is 40%, 36 to 60 is 30%.
Yes.
We are not meeting both of these thresholds.
And the reason for that is because of what we've just talked about in terms of the structuring our debt, so that we've actually got it in a reasonable bucket in the foreseeable future once Three Waters, because otherwise we would have actually had to massage the figures. All right. And I think it's really important that I think when we come to actually change the resolution on that note, because I think it's really important that not only do we note the Treasury Management Report, but also noting we're actually non-compliant on the basis of managing our debt for the Three Water transition. And that was a conscious decision made by this committee. And I think that, you got that, Alana? No,
Yeah, I have.
You got
Yeah, noting non-compliance on the basis of managing our debt for Three Waters transition.
it? Yep. So that's why we're non-compliant. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye. That wasn't so bad, was it?
No, thank you very much for being kind.
No, we're always kind here, aren't we, team?
Having a good report.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Your quarterly financial report, 3.9 pages, 137 to 144.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sue.
So through the chair, yeah, I'm leading this time. So this has actually already gone to council, and it was basically preliminary figures. It doesn't include depreciation. At the moment, I'm hoping that we get our fixed assets and depreciation sorted by the end of the week, and some of the reserve balances too. But it basically gives you an indication that says that, okay, we've got a lot more subsidies and grants, and that's a result of the Cyclone Gabrielle. Obviously, when it comes, so we're looking healthy in revenue as the expenses go, and the activity costs are much higher, and that's as a result of Cyclone Gabrielle as well, all the damages that we've had to remediate. Employee benefits, you've known all along, we haven't been able to get employees, there's been a revolving door. And fortunately, we were 1.7 million down because that's basically been sucked up by our share of what we've had to put into the storm damage, because not all of it's roading, a lot of it's other things, and some of it has been roading that we haven't had 100, or there mightn't have been 100% on, like hiring pumps or like we've done in Mangawhai. So we're in a really good position, although it actually says, and I had an update actually, because the accounts show at the moment that although that shows 2.5 million, there was more subsidy actually coming in subsequent to that, and I think it actually only ends up being about 1.5 million difference, the surplus deficit on what we estimated it to be. So we're 1.5 million down, and that's really cash down, but it's but it's a really good story because we're down in our employee costs. That's basically helped to fund the storm costs, and we haven't had to borrow in, which is really good. So, because normally you'd have to go to debt.
Yep.
Questions?
Oh, and I have got a couple, so I can, I have, Mr. Howard sent some through.
Councillor Howard, thank you.
Councillor Howard, employee benefits, asking about I've just explained to you the funding of last year has been sucked up by the Cyclone Gabrielle cost. However, the people that we haven't been able to attract we wouldn't probably put them to any new position. We still need those positions, and they are planners, project managers. We've had 2 leave this week, handed their notice this week, another 2. So it's the engineers, the planners and accountants is another one that we can't keep hold of in this market.
I guess my point to that, Mr. Chair, through the chair, was that as we move, every month we move, we've got these allocated sums of employee remuneration benefits. The annual cost to us goes down because, we haven't filled those positions. So are we going to get to a position that actually there may be some new areas that we see as being required? Does that actually create some potential funding in its own way?
So through the chair, we'll get looking at producing the first management accounts for this financial year, which will be the 2 months to the end of August, hoping to be able to get them to you at the next council meeting. And we'll see what that shows then. The budget for this year was less than last year, but because of the fact that we're still losing staff, it potentially could be down. I think it's up to the chief executive, and because I know there are positions like in parks over in Mangawhai, huge issue here. But I think the chief executive has appointed Morrison Lowe to look at the structure and may not want to make any changes until we have some input from them.
So just one question. So it might be a question more for Sarah Morris, I guess, but most of these people that are leaving, are they leaving because there's better rates at other councils, or is Three Waters sucking them away, and where are they?
No. So through the chair, not Three Waters. We've had, I think a couple have gone to Whangarei District Council, bigger money. It's all about the money and going to consultants. And some of them were even hiring back through consultants because there's a shortage.
Yeah.
That's the reality. So we were having to relook at our strategy.
Right.
Just on that, Craig, I get rung up, well, I used to get rung up regularly by chief executives and HR people, right? Saying, Philip, do you know in your councils that you work with, are there any good accountants? And I go, do you think I could tell you? Imagine my relationship with that council if they found out that I was helping a staff member be poached, so I actually don't respond, right? So, okay, just but again, right, every council, most councils that I am involved in, there are a shortage of accountants and planners and engineers. So it's not just you, right? It's actually across the whole country.
Just as a high level comment, rather than question is, that's what I'm seeing in whole of New Zealand, is that poaching is the best exercise. I started consulting business and I poach from the council, I make 3 times more money of the ratepayers.
Yep.
So I think it's a bigger issue at the national level too.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
So, thanks for that. So next question I have from councillor Howard is about capital expenditure. What guarantees can be provided of achieving the full completion of all projects? Yeah, anyway, and do we realistically have the resource to complete all? The answer is no and no. We won't, in my opinion. We've lost 2 project managers. There's a shortage of contracting staff as well at that level. So I will do our best, but I think we were too ambitious in looking into our annual plan and our carryovers.
So, word for your LTP.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I appreciate that. So, Mr. Chair, the question is that 79.4 million that we have allocated as capital works for the next year. A rhetorical question. There's no risk for us sort of losing any of that. We control it. We may decide perhaps not to go ahead with some of the projects ultimately. But I mean, it's just a matter of rollover, as I understand it.
So for there's a risk that we can't complete the projects, but the type of projects that we've carried forward, I think there's only 4 that relate to the MB funding, and we're working close with them. They're key and they have to be finished. We've received some with TIF and they tend to be flexible. They're much lower values on projects with our timings. The rest are all storm damage. There's a lot of renewal projects and a lot of other community projects that may not actually be achievable.
Okay.
So it's disappointing if you put for councils, because if we do put projects in our annual plan and then you have to report on them at the annual report, as we're having to do now, then all you see is, no, we didn't complete it, it's been rolled over, and it's not a good look.
But the clarification is that we're not at risk of losing funding.
That's right.
External funding. Okay, thank you.
I think the thing to note is that every time that we increase the legislation or compound the rules, etc., we are increasing the demand for skilled people. So the simpler we can keep things, the better we will control the demand for labour.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I totally agree with you. And you would have seen an increase in your audit fees and the lack of auditors, right? That's driven, in my opinion, out of 2 predominant reasons. One is increased accounting standards and increased auditing standards. So, okay. Any other questions on the quarterly financial report? So when you get to full complement on your finance staff, so it might never, right? It would actually be nice to see a cash flow statement and a balance sheet as part of the quarterly reporting. Nice to see only once you got to full, because they're a pain to produce, and I don't want to burden the staff until you get to full complement. So I'll give you a breather there.
Yes, we do produce those, but until, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not shooting, I'm shooting the messenger. I'm just saying when you get there, it's just setting the standard. All right. So I'm happy to move the recommendation. Do I have a second? I think Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And according to my clock on my computer, it is 11:58, and I suggest we take a 5-minute. 10:58. And I said we're going to break at 11 for 5 minutes, so I suggest we adjourn for 5 minutes.
Perfect timing, Chair.
reconvene. And on 3.10, page 45. Oh, we're trucking through. Well done, team. The annual report of LGFA. Sue, thank you.
Okay. So this I bring to you once or twice a year. This is their period, their annual report to the end of June 2023. They note there they've completed 16 out of 17 performance measures and that they do 93% of lending to all councils in New Zealand. The one thing I did see that was lacking in their report, which Chair commented on earlier, is about Three Waters. It's weasel words they've got about Three Waters. Because they obviously don't know themselves. There's nothing there about the risk or the impacts on them or anything. So it's something that's, and how it's going to affect them and therefore us. So,
Yes.
so it's a real missing link in their report, I would say. They should have been upfront and honest, and at least have something, you know, saying.
Well, I think the problem is they don't.
Could you ask them, email them and say what's the implication?
But thank you, Councillor Ash, I've got the same note. I think, you know, we need to be up. We're not a shareholder, right? So the risk is actually lower for us. So, anything else, Sue?
No, that's about all. I mean, it's their annual report.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Ash, if you just want to look at the advantages of being with LGFA, if you go to page, no, it's overprinted, 155 of the agenda, you can see what the at the top line on that table is what LGFA borrows at and therefore passes it on to I was going to say members, but the people who borrow, compared with other AAA and AAA minus rates. So the ones that I am looking at are the ANZ, because we can't borrow from the other AAAs. So, for example, the one I would be looking at would be BNZ in terms of the spread of their swap rates and the spread. So you look at LGFA being top line and the 2024 issue, they were at 2 basis points and the BNZ were at 25 basis points. So they are actually better by 23 basis points, which then gets passed on to us. And of course, LGFA's margin is less than the BNZ's margin because they are there for one purpose into local government. And then if you go out to 2027, LGFA were at 29 basis points and BNZ was 63 or Westpac at 60. So again, that's almost over 30 basis points. Not quite half a percent, but a third of a percent difference, which then gets passed on to us. So I see that as a significant advantage for local authorities in terms of the cost of borrowing.
But they don't, they don't have big coffers to lend.
Oh, no, who? LGFA? Oh, that's huge. Oh, huge. I mean, when LGFA go to the market, traditionally they have been oversubscribed.
Okay.
So when they go to the market, they actually put out, because of their good standing, they have traditionally been oversubscribed.
Okay.
Out of interest, Phil, did you know under Councils for Local Democracy what funding model they were going to use?
No, I don't think they got that far. I mean, that's part of. See, the challenge with LGFA, with the Three Waters, it's actually guaranteed by the ratepayer. And this is the trouble that the water proposals are.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be completely neutral from councils, for the idea is that you get what is known as balance sheet separation. So there is no financial guarantees. So the issue with the current proposal is LGFA legally can't lend to the new water entities. However, if there was a change in government and the Three Waters was repealed, and I don't know what National are proposing, all they're saying is they'll repeal and replace. They haven't disclosed their policy, but word on the street says it's likely to be a council-controlled organisation model. If that was to happen, then council-controlled organisations can borrow from LGFA if the councils then that are owners of the CCOs actually guarantees that. And there's a process for that. There are a couple of CCOs who are currently borrowers directly off LGFA. So that's probably why, Sue, they actually haven't mentioned what is actually happening with the Three Waters debt, because there's only proposals of how the new Three Water entities will actually borrow. Maybe it's a discussion we have in public excluded.
This moment, we're all treading in the Three Waters.
Sorry?
Moment, we're treading Three Waters.
We're treading, yep, exactly. Oh, well, some of us actually have to tread a bit harder than other councils, right? Because of when that transition actually occurs.
Do I understand, if I can ask this, have we got a liability through LGFA to other councils?
The only liability that we have is if through our guarantee. So we don't actually have a direct liability to a council. We only have an obligation to support LGFA if they can't meet their liabilities. And that guarantee is proportionate to your total rates. So I don't know, I'd have to do the maths for you. So the LGFA guarantee, if a guarantee is called up, the amount of guarantee that you would have to pay is proportional to total rates compared with other rates of all the guarantees. Whereas, of course, Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, because they're the biggest setter of rates in the country, pay the lion's share. And interestingly, with Auckland, while they are taking the lion's share of the guarantee because of their rates, they are limited to the amount of borrowing they can actually undertake of their total borrowings through LGFA to 40%. I think it's 40% from memory. I have to check, either 40 or 60, I can't remember, but that is the amount of their total borrowings they can actually have exposed to LGFA.
The world economy is in turmoil at the moment. So what, in the practical sense, from your viewpoint, is the potential liability of this council to other councils?
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, not 0.00000. Okay, it's so close to zero.
Yeah.
The reason I say that, and that's on my current state, the reason I say that is if you actually look at what LGFA have in place, the issue is that guarantee would only be called upon is if they could not meet a repayment. Now, that is extreme on the basis that they do actually have sufficient cash in their bank. That's part of their Standard & Poor's rating. They are rated AAA. The other issue too is they have the ability to borrow LGFA off the Reserve Bank. And also there is also another tranche within that facility as well that there is an ability to call upon as well. So to me I just spoke to the chief executive. Maybe what I might do is refresh that work I did for another council who wanted to be a guarantor and just talk about what are the risks and what is the current protection that LGFA have in place to protect their guarantors.
Yeah, it'd be a good thing to get out there to the public, because you get the scuttlebutt discussion going on out there.
Oh,
It's based on not having knowledge, you know.
yeah. So interestingly, when I was only on one risk and audit committee and I was acting CFO at another council, I was invited by LGFA to go to their Borrowers' Day. And I went with my audit and risk or risk and assurance hat on, and I was very impressed with their risk mitigation processes. In fact, I still get an invitation to go to their Borrowers' Day. So LGFA are very transparent over their risks and how they manage it. I think LGFA is the best thing since sliced bread for local authority borrowing since the disillusionment of the ability to borrow on the retail market, which occurred in 1998.
It's caused chaos.
Caused chaos. We needed to move into an appropriate mechanism.
Yeah.
There were unintended consequences, and the banks, well, they don't. Up until LGFA, the banks were the primary government, and you can see the cost in that table of the cost to local government.
In your opinion, are we adequately protecting ourselves as a council against the exposures that we have?
I would say you are, because LGFA are. Yeah. And I think that's the important question is, and that would be really good. I'll talk to LGFA and get an update on terms of what protections they currently have in place, because it does move, but I know that it doesn't move dramatically. And I can get those numbers from Andrew Meikle at LGFA.
It's important because I don't think most ratepayers understand this council's gone from a cop case a few years ago to being extremely well positioned versus most.
I totally concur, right? I would say that in 2011, this council was at serious risk of not being able to refinance its debt. Because what it did, it borrowed $50 million of its $80 million, which was all due in one tranche. And should the council not be able to fund that refinance of that, what was that, 50 million, then it would have been at serious risk. Now, there is, because of LGFA and their criteria in terms of their borrowing policies that they enforce on other councils, no other council would have actually been in that position. Now, interestingly, for Kaipara to join LGFA, they had to do a number of things. And LGFA doesn't willingly accept every council as a borrower from them. There is one council currently that will never meet that criteria. And that's because they do not have sufficient rate income to guarantee their debt, and that's the Chatham Islands. And the government will not give a guarantee to LGFA for the Chatham Islands. So that's why Chatham Islands will never be a borrower. Not that their debt is going to be horrendous anyway, but because of that very principle, they want to see a whole lot of things in place. And before a council will be accepted into the family of LGFA.
Yeah, so quick question on that, because that was 2011 and 2024 or 25.
Yeah.
We may need $70 million for Mangawhai, just a replica of Mangawhai wastewater.
Yep.
And maybe 50 million for Dargaville.
Yep.
So do you think our council will be capable? I mean, it's a premonition kind of thing, capable to go through that?
All I would actually say is based, there are a number of factors before LGFA will actually issue that amount of debt. But I think at the moment, with your current structure, both governance and management, you're in a much better position than the council in 2011, both management and governance.
Thank you.
I mean, you know, the issue for me is, it's not about whether LGFA will borrow.
Yeah.
It's whether your community can actually afford that scheme, right? That's the first hurdle, right, that you need to overcome, not the borrowing.
That's why we come right back around too, when you've got development occurring. It's about balance the development to pay its own way of feed into that, so that the existing communities not.
But I mean, it's not just the ratepayer, it's the
whole cycle.
The whole cycle. Now, if you look at, there was a paper presented to Tauranga City Council and it made yesterday's Herald about the need for infrastructure in Papamoa East.
Yeah.
They're talking about $300 million.
Yeah.
They're saying as if, because of the uncertainty over the Three Waters, if that decision is pushed out a few years, it might actually cost $700 million, which would be unaffordable. Now, I've got nothing to do with Tauranga City Council in that area. I know the area, I know the costs there.
Under commissioners as well, aren't they?
They are under commissioners, but go into the New Zealand Herald and Google Papamoa East.
Yeah.
There was an article in yesterday's Herald.
We don't gonna figure like that.
No, well, you do and you don't, right? They are facing similar issues to you with affordability.
Just a quick corollary to that. I mean, this out of interest. Now we have a process to follow in all those private plan change for development. We are doing lots of it. And being a banker, while I have my, that kind of risk hats on, there's a process to be followed. So those processes will need in a year, all those inputs. And we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think this is probably be a discussion beyond.
Or would it be?
Beyond what we're actually talking about, but to me, it's all connected. It's all connected. Maybe, Mr. Chief Executive, we might need a future discussion down the track, depending on what happens with the election and some certainty over the Three Waters, right?
I love that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, if the entity A continues on its current track, that will be a risk for the council to make sure that entity A provides that. That's the issue that I have. Whether you got any comments, Mr. Chief Executive?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thanks. So, we're well aware. NCA and the issues, the work that Anand's doing, particularly around the wastewater network here for this financial year, is all about leading into making sure that we're in a good space for the community and those projects that need to be done through ETTA. So that's what we're working to this financial year to make sure that happens. That, and your question, Councillor Nair, is solely dependent on the Three Waters reforms either continuing or not. At the moment, we're planning on it not Three Waters continuing because we have to under legislation. But again, to the chair's point, after the election, we'll see what happens, and we may need to reconvene quite quickly to work out a plan, depending on where they go.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're probably gone as far as we want to.
Good background. That's the lesson.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it.
So I'm happy that the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee notes the LGFA annual report for the year ended 30th of June and note the associated risks. Okay, because that's about the Three Waters. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Councillor Mike by a nose. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And you're putting the comment as well to them.
Yeah, well, that's why I deliberately put about noting the risks.
Yeah.
So then Sue can follow that up. Our next item is 311. Legislative compliance.
So this is what we report on annually, and it's basically we get all of our managers to sign that they are complying and they're aware of the legislation, and we get Simpson Grierson to produce what changes are. We are looking at some programs. In the future, we may be able to replace this a bit more efficiently with software that integrates with delegations or does integrate with our risk register so that it actually tells us when there's changes in the legislation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? No. So you're happy to move the recommendation, are you, councillor Ash?
Yes.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Mike. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Next item, 3.2, 175. Welcome, Glenys. While you're coming up, we'll take your report as read.
Fantastic.
Are there any new further information you want to bring to the committee or highlights?
No, I just thought if it's okay, I might just give you a little bit of context why I changed the report ever so slightly from previous ones. It still has very much the same sort of flavour. I've given you the data. I have collected it though over a year, as opposed to typically just giving you a snapshot of the last 3 months and then showing you the contrast. And the reason that I've done that is that I've been in the role since May of last year. And the three things that I was sort of asked to do when I came into this role was to really increase the profile of health and safety, both internally and externally with our contractors, to really improve the culture of health and safety here at the council, and to take a more integrated approach, so to look at it more holistically. And I think that we've made really good strides in doing that in the last year. So I really wanted to kind of give you a sort of a snapshot of what is typically that you'd see in a health and safety system. So I've broken it down into the elements of a health and safety system and then given you a commentary of how we're tracking in relation to those elements.
Okay, very good. Attached to the report is the health and safety. I can hear myself? No. Page 182 is the commentary on the health and safety induction plan as well. Okay, any comments?
Is this, Dennis, is your parameter in this role to look at doing associated projects, you know, who are not council people?
For contractors?
Well, specifically, I've got a question regarding Tracks Mangawai, who I think they've had to stop work on them because until they produce an adequate health and safety plan, they can't continue. But they've been operating for years, these people, successfully. So I'm just trying to understand the risk to us by them not producing one, and it actually concerns me because I ran a Tracks Trust as well, previously to getting on council, and it's one of the reasons why some community groups actually get stopped from participating in what they've been doing, sometimes for years, you know. So I just wanted to understand how that works.
From a health and safety point of view, we're certainly trying to do a lot more work in this space. So really over the last year, I've tried to ensure that internally we've got really good systems, that they're really robust. We've really looked at increasing our knowledge and understanding and our relationships with our contractors. So again, making sure we get good, timely information, that information can be shared in quite a transparent way. And now very much my focus over the last 6 months has been starting to look at some of those community groups and working with our internal teams as those contracts are renewed, so contract for services are renewed, that actually we've got some quite robust information in there around how we have those conversations about health and safety. One of the things that we're doing at the moment is working alongside NRC and providing a suite of sort of resources for those community groups. So internally what we're doing is making sure they've got some good reporting information and ways to report directly into KDC, but also things like SOPs about what does good practice look like. And we're working very much alongside NRC with regards to that. So what I'd say to you is that this is a bit of a work in progress.
Just a quick question. I went through those incident reporting by contractors and all. I was surprised about one Suzuki NE 08938 having two incidents whereby, hit, and they work at the transfer station. Do you actually mention why it happens with that vehicle?
So when there is a contractor incident, as the health and safety manager, I inquire with that contractor around what was the incident. They send information to us. They have contractually need to report to us very quickly soon after. But then I follow that up, and what I'm really looking for is what were the root causes, what is the learning that's come out of it, and then we try and pass that information over to the manager of that particular contract so that they can then follow up and make sure that implementations are being implemented and that they're working as intended.
All I was asking, something came out of it or not?
Yes.
The one, because there is a repeat. Anyway, that's just.
So yes, it did. So they changed their practice.
Thank you.
Anything else? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just following on, Glynis, from the Mayor's questions relating there. It is a difficult balance. We are reliant so much on some of these volunteer groups. And like the Mayor, I've come across others that have just people who have just put their hands up and said, no, well, I'm not going to do it anymore, which ultimately becomes a cost, or potentially, or does in actuality become a cost to council to replace that. So it's a fine line. I know you've got legislation to work that balance between keeping them engaged and involved. And I think that, when it comes to the trackies and the likes, I mean, it's almost imperative that we somehow or another keep them involved. I'm sure you appreciate that.
Yeah, look, I very much agree with you, and I'll give you a contrast. So one of the projects that's been ongoing at the moment that you will have discussed is around Poto Wharf. One of the documents that that we produced after the workers as temporarily stayed from the contractors themselves was looking at who would be responsible for what going forward. So what types of maintenance duties would be appropriate for a community group to look after? What would be appropriate for when, say, the contractor should be brought in, and when should a specialist be brought in? And I think we're starting to have a lot more robust conversations about that division of labour. We're not setting people up for failure going forward, and we're not setting up an issue that could potentially have a safety implication many years down the track because somebody has done something that sits outside of their, their competency and, their capability and capacity levels. And so I think that we're starting to have those conversations. What we're trying to do from a health and safety point of view is make sure that the communication around health and safety issues can be done in really quick time and that it's really open. And again, there's that opportunity for proper dialogue. So what we're trying to do is make sure that there's good reporting tools that are seen not only by the health and safety person, but also the contract manager, so what that team might be, but also provide coaching and skills for those people who are managing contractors about how do you come alongside a contractor and have conversations, or whether it be a community group. So how do you have those conversations about practice, and then what should you do about it? And so we're trying to do a whole lot of things sort of simultaneously to make sure that the systems that sit in around how people work are as efficient as they possibly can be.
Don't become overbearing.
That's right. Yeah, we don't want to be compliant for compliance sake. And we all know that there's a tendency in health and safety to chase a piece of paper. We do quite like a piece of paper because we have to be able to show evidence that something has occurred. And of course, if you and I just have a conversation and it's off the cuff, well, then how do we know that it occurred?
That is true. So just for clarification, do you call a local community group a contractor?
No, so it would depend. If they are receiving some funds and there is a contract for service and they're receiving specific funds to do a particular task, then for me personally, I put them into the contractor range because we're going to be looking at a contract that sits in around what they're doing.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can ask through you, what what steps are you taking to deal with people with severe financial stress?
So is that,
Is that a staff member or is that a community?
No, it would be a ratepayer probably.
Can I intervene?
Please.
That's not our actual responsibility.
Okay.
Okay. Only if it was a staff member or a contractor. If a staff member was, absolutely. And I'm sure the chief executive's got, it's not only financial stress, but any other stress, I'm sure Dennis can actually comment on that. That's a risk, right?
yes, so maybe I can talk about through the wellbeing. So we are talking about here with a staff member with some stresses in their life. Maybe I could link this to the question that you in fact asked. Councillor Howard did ask a question of me that, and I'll just paraphrase it, but basically that we face risk, particularly in busy times, of having people that are burnt out and off work recuperating, leading to significant risk, and essentially not being able to, that we've got people down so we can't get the work done. And would it be advisable for the CEO to address health and safety status at least bi-monthly at council meetings so that governance members can be across issues as they arise? So perhaps what I could do is I could just broaden my answer here. And so I could take in a slightly bigger area. What I do is I just want to put a little bit of context around it. The Umbrella Group, they put out a report earlier this year, and they looked at 7,000 workers across New Zealand, and they did link people with higher workloads with having 2 times greater odds of experiencing high levels of psychological distress. And I counter that, I put that alongside the Massey study of December of last year that estimated about 18% of the New Zealand workforce were experiencing burnout. So if I put those as a figure, and then I look at what are we doing here at Kaipara District Council from a kind of a wellbeing point of view, I think we're doing something that's very balanced. So what we do from a health and safety point of view, the health and safety team, myself and my colleague, we sit across most of the business team meetings, particularly those in an operational sense, and we are very much listing out for things like workload and fatigue and burnout. We have developed a number of conversation starters for our health and safety reps. And so certainly as we moved out of our response into our initial recovery, when we had a lot of staff members working long hours, what we did there was that we had conversation starters for our health and safety reps so that they were in turn empowered to have conversations with their team about things like burnout, about stresses that were coming through, things like that. We also had toil, which is, taking time off in lieu, and our managers and our CEO is very proactive in that space and making sure that people do in turn manage their workloads. We have run monthly roadmap chats with one time with our manager. Just this last Monday, we did, myself and somebody from PNC, we did a monthly management essential training, which is very much around how managers
Let's reconvene. We'll move to item 3.15 on page 205. Thank you, Sue.
Yes, so this is about the insurance renewal, and we're working with Aon at the moment and looking to renew our Three Waters assets for material damage to the 30th of June. And after that time, then obviously the liability is taken up by Three Waters. We know that the costs of insurance are going up, and that's why we've invited Emma Jurisic and Matthew Wilson to talk about their areas of what they're finding in the market, and so what's likely to happen for our renewal. So it's really timely for them to talk to us. I know in the paper it says we're doing a full review. We actually haven't got money for that in our budget at the moment, but it's likely to commence the 1st of July 24 of our so our asset register will be improved at that time, but we've done our best with looking at a lot of the capital expenditure that we've been doing over the last 3 years, making sure that that's included on the register. But there are some beforehand that we've found there's been assets missing. So we've done our best to capture the bigger assets, but we really need a full asset register. So we'll propose to do that from the 1st of July 24. And other than that, I'll just ask Emma, and I think she's dropped out, I think, but we've got Matthew Wilson there online.
We've got them together, have we?
Yes, we do.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, can you hear us okay?
We can, thank you, Matthew. Nice to see you again.
Yes, and you? We do have, I'm just trying to get the camera angles right here. Cinema photography is not my thing. We do have a presentation to go through which talks about general market conditions and the like. So if it's okay with you, I'll share a screen.
Absolutely, thank you.
This isn't death by PowerPoint. Please sing out if there are any questions on the way through. So I will hopefully get the buttons working in the right order, which should be that one.
Wow, okay. Yep, thank you, Matthew. We can see that.
Excellent. Okay, so just as a brief introduction, my name is Matthew Wilson. I'm the National Manager for Aon's Local Government Risk Practice Group. Aon acts for a significant number of councils throughout the country. And Deanna, who was going to be here, unfortunately is away at the moment, so she can't make it. She also works with me on a national level. And I've got Emma here with me, who is the day-to-day account manager for you. So we'll run through some things, give you a background as to what's happening in the market and what our expectations are. So that's, market update. Touch a little bit on risk management, and I've heard the opening comments about asset schedule reviews and all that sort of stuff. That all forms part of it. And also some of the things that you can do that may mitigate the impacts of the insurance market. So where are we at? We're going to focus mainly on property placements. That will probably be the biggest chunk of your premium spend. The insurance market is a global market. They're basically, of the 5 or 6 insurers based in New Zealand, most of them will report back offshore, whether that is Australia, America, or Europe. And because of that, we do have to take into account global considerations. And the biggest driver in the property market currently, as shown on this slide, is what are called secondary Nat Cat events. And that, I'm afraid, is a little bit of insurance jargon. Hang on, Emma's got a call. That is a bit of insurance jargon, which refers to secondary natural catastrophe events. Historically, what has driven the insurance market has been the large-scale earthquake type event. That tends to drive the amount of capacity that is available in the market. Over the last 5 years, we have seen an increase in frequency and severity of these secondary events. Whilst they may not have the overall total cost of a huge earthquake, if you think of the Christchurch sequence or other events, The issue we're now seeing is that these secondary Nat Cat events are happening more often, and they are also happening in areas which are more densely populated. Therefore, you're leading into bigger insurance costs. And you've only got to look at the newspapers globally. We reference a few there. And of course, we had the events of January, February in New Zealand with the Auckland, Coromandel, Northland event, and then Cyclone Gabriel, which are significant in terms of costs. So that's just a bit of a background as to what is driving the market. What does this mean? So to put some context, and these numbers are, I'm afraid, are constantly changing. To put some context into those events in New Zealand, I'm not going to read through all of those, but as you can see, it was significant. I've just come back from London, where we have been presenting to global markets about infrastructure insurance programs and liability programs. And there was a lot of questions from the markets about what is being done in terms of risk management, risk mitigation. How can the country understand where these events are going to happen and how bad are they going to be? And what is being done in terms of resilience, infrastructure design, stock bank design, that sort of stuff. So these events have registered on the global market. I mean, out of these events from a council perspective, without going into any specifics, we have probably claims which are in excess of $100 million. So you can see that this has got attention of the markets. What are the outcomes of that? Well, insurers insure. So insurers go off and buy reinsurance. There is going to be an increase in reinsurance costs. One of the local markets basically used up their reinsurance by the end of Q1 this year, so they've had to go out and buy more. There is also going to be a greater reliance potentially on overseas capital. The initial indications are that rating increases are going to be between +15% to +20%. However, there is a caveat to that. If you have been in an area which hasn't suffered a major loss, then those increases might come back a little bit. But for initial estimates, is that's what we're looking at. We do have a bit of a double whammy. We're currently operating in an era of high inflation, increased values. The reason we reference that is your insurance premium is basically a rate % times your total insured values. So when we talk about a +15% rating increase, that's on the rate % itself. If your values increase 20%, you're going to be looking at somewhere in the region of a 35% increase in premium, because you've got the two factors applying. Now, there are some things that we can do about that, and we'll cover some of those off. The other thing that we have seen, and I think you'll be okay, but we have seen some insurers looking to increase the deductible levels or the excess levels around what they refer to as fluvial and pluvial. If you think of that as flood and rain, basically. So flood events or severe rain events which cause flooding. That's the general feel from what we're hearing in the market currently. Are there any questions on any of this so far?
No questions so far. Thank you, Matthew.
A brief overview of sort of some of the things that you can do. So, and this, as I say, was alluded to, I think, earlier on. Asset selection. We understand that, you know, as we've said, your premium is basically derived from a total sum insured, your assets, times a rate %. What we are suggesting to some councils is, do you need to insure everything? We are acutely aware, and you know, I've had conversations with many people around this. We're acutely aware of an affordability issue. One of the questions we ask councils is what is the dollar value that equates to 1% on your rates? And that, depending on the size of the council, can vary hugely. So if you have an unexpected a bill or an unexpected amount to pay, what is that figure that would effectively equate to 1% on your rates? So we are aware that if your insurance costs keep increasing at 20, 30% a year, there does become an affordability issue. And one of the things you can do is to review what assets you insure. Do you need to insure everything? And that is actually far easier said than done, but it is a sort of piece of work that we will go through with you to understand, and the conversations we can have with you. The other point that is very, very much on the underwriter's radar is ensuring that the valuations are correct. And I think you've done a lot of work in that space recently, so I'm comfortable with that. But we don't want to be seeing accounting values. So we don't want to be seeing optimized depreciated replacement costs, because they are not what it would cost you to replace the asset. However, having said that, part of that asset selection process can also be, how would you replace something? So if you have a property which, let's say, is $3 million in value, I use community halls as an example, and I'm ignoring any politics or any community pressures around this conversation, so please take that into account. You might have a property which was built 20, 30, 40 years ago, beautiful timber frame building, lovely, costs $3 million to rebuild as is. It may be that you no longer need to have that type of building there. It might be that there is an alternative structure that can be put in place, which has a significantly lower cost, because there's been a change in the use, or there's a change in the community itself, for example. So you can then start to think about things like functional replacement value. So again, that would have the impact of reducing that overall total declared value that you have, which would mitigate some of the impacts of the market. And again, that's easier said than done. There needs to be, I should imagine, there needs to be some sort of consultative process on that, and it's something that we can obviously talk to you about. We've got there that you've not got any infrastructural assets covered. What we're referring to there is the below ground reticulation assets. Your treatment plants and the like can be included on your material damage policy. They are defined as being above ground assets, even though there are some below ground components. So that's a piece of work that Emma's been doing with the council recently. I will put a caveat on that, if I may. The Three Waters reform. Again, I'm not going to get into politics. The Three Waters reform, currently our advice to councils is to, if you have those Three Waters type assets that are on your material damage schedule, still include them, still make sure they're insured. We don't know what's going to happen with the Three Waters reform post the election. National have issued a statement that says they will be repealing the Act, I think, within 100 days. The NTU is still carrying on doing what it's doing, but really it's almost a bit of a status quo, or just hold tight until we know what the outcome of the election is, and then we can start to have more in-depth conversations with you around those assets. The last couple of points are around business interruption. This is sort of loss of rents or additional increased cost of working as a result of a loss. You don't currently have any gross profit declared. That is not unusual for a council. But again, it's a conversation that we will be having with the team leading up to the renewal as to whether that needs to be reviewed. Most councils will only look at ensuring something called additional increased cost of working. And that basically provides cover if you, let's say, lost your main office building, but you can then go and hire accommodation somewhere else to carry on doing your work and what needs to be done. The cost of hiring that alternative accommodation would be covered under that additional increased cost of working. And also, if you have properties that you derive a rental income from, then we can ensure the loss of rents for those properties should something happen to them. In regards to your
question, thanks, Matthew.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you for this presentation going on. And I'm quite glad that you are giving options. Not many insurers give that you can actually insure what is imperative rather than mucking around with the things like loss of profit or whatever it is. So would you be at some point giving us some codes to look at how much we are saving and what is the current status of insurance, total insurance amount, and what it can be brought down to, and a kind of comparative analysis for us to make a judgment call? Thank you.
Yeah, that's part of the renewal process that we're in the middle of at the moment. So currently, all of the information has gone to the markets. We are waiting for the markets to come back to us with their terms, but we have asked for some options from them. And then obviously we will be able to report back to you on that. If I am honest, I don't want to create an unrealistic expectation. When we talk about some of these things that you can do, the things that you are or can be looked at are not necessarily going to result in savings in insurance costs, but they will mitigate the impact of the market.
Yep.
So if you, and I haven't got the numbers for last year, but you know, if you paid, let's say, you know, $200,000, $300,000 in insurance premiums last year, which isn't your number, but I'm just using that as an example. By undertaking some of this work and looking at these things, if we're saying the market is looking at, say, 15% increase, rather than your premiums going up by 15%, they may only go up by 5%. I don't want to create an expectation that you'll be looking at numbers going backwards this year unless there is a fundamental change in the structure of the program.
No, all I was saying is suggesting the assets which we don't need to be insured and what is imperative to insure. So like just going for the must-do options, being a banker or ex-banker, I have no insurance now because I don't need to. Some of the property you would have to insure because you have a liability on that, a loan on that. So if we can have a comparison, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no, understand. Yes, absolutely. Okay. The last point on there is we also place for you public liability and professional indemnity covers. Currently, you have sorry, that's the wrong term, a limit of indemnity under those policies of $15 million each. That is adequate for a smaller provincial council. You know, the largest city councils, Auckland, Wellington, Hamilton, they will carry bigger numbers than that, but they also have a higher exposure. So that's just a real brief summary of what you've got there. What can we do? And we've sort of covered off some of this already, so I'm not going to go through that one in any great detail. This is perhaps the slide, and I know Phil's probably seen this before a number of times. We are having conversations with councils because of that affordability issue. Insurance historically with councils has been a transactional purchase. You buy a material damage policy, you buy a liability policy, you buy a motor insurance policy, and the list goes on. Whilst you still need to buy some of those covers, what we're wanting to do is move councils from that transactional purchase to a more strategic purchase, i.e. a purchase that is aligned with your requirements. Now, if you look at the hexagon that you can see on the slide, the very last component, that pale blue one in the sort of top left-hand side, is optimizing insurance. If the driver for what you buy by way of an insurance program is purely based on saving money, i.e. cost, that is in essence the tail wagging the dog. And what we need to do, or what council need to do, and obviously we're happy to have these conversations with you, is to go through that process, understand what your risks are, understand what your risk appetite is, understand loss modelling or understanding the true exposure, understand what you can do to control or prevent some of these risks, what your resilience is. That could be balance sheet resilience, or that could be physical asset resilience. And then at the end of that, you're in a position to decide, okay, well, how much of that risk do we want to transfer? And that transfer component is the insurance piece. Insurance is still, even though the pricing is going up, is still a relatively cost-effective way of transferring that risk. But we should, from a prudent risk governance point of view, actually work with you to understand your position. You may have a risk appetite that, let's say, suggests you're quite happy to carry an excess or deductible under your material damage policy of $250,000. I'm making numbers up, of course, but say $250,000. That will have an impact on your premium because the insurers aren't exposed to those lower value attritional losses. Therefore, that will reflect positively in the premium. And this is why I say, using that as an example, you've got to understand your appetite first for that. If you just say, yep, I want to save $15,000, $20,000 on insurance spend and I'll go for a big deductible, without understanding what your exposures are below that deductible and your appetite for those exposures, that might prove to be a poor decision in the long run, because you may have a number of claims during the course of a year that fall below that 250,000, and you then have to pay for those yourself, which then negates any premium saving, and they're unexpected. So these are some of the things that we're talking about. We want to start talking about with councils in more detail, and this is how you can mitigate the impacts of the market. But that absolutely has to be a cost benefit to you in doing so, which is why that sort of hexagon there is giving a sort of framework that you can work through. I hope that makes sense. That subject in itself is probably an hour and a half's presentation, and we haven't got time or the ability to go through all that right now, but it's just sort of setting the scene. Okay.
Just for your information, it wasn't one of your clients, Matthew, was the opposition's, but I went through this with another council. They spent 6 months going through this process before they landed on an answer. Okay, so that's okay. So it's not like you can do it for yourself really quickly because you've only got a small group of assets and you're only got to consult with yourself, right? There's actually a wider implication for number of assets, your willingness to pay, all sorts of your financial balance sheet, etc. Moving on, thank you.
Okay, so this next slide that hopefully you can see is just a summary of what I've spoken about. Can you retain more risk? Are your values accurate? Because of course, if you're making decisions based on an asset schedule that is not accurate or complete, there is a world of difference between choosing not to insure an asset or not having that asset insured because it's never made it to your property schedule. So it's just making sure that the underlying data is accurate and correct, and then you're in an informed position to make some of those decisions. That was the last one. That's right, Deanna put the slide together.
Thank you.
It's a very brief synopsis of some of the things that we need to look at. I will stop sharing the screen if you can just bear with me a second. Stop sharing.
Yep, you're back.
Okay. You were back? Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So, yeah, brief synopsis. It's a process we're discussing with all councils. Some are further down the path than others. And I think to the point about the asset selection piece, I can pretty much guarantee you that if you went to every asset owner within the organisation, they're all going to say, my assets are absolutely critical and must be insured. That's when the conversation needs to be had at a suitable level where there is a strategic decision made about what we do and don't insure, and having a rationale behind why that is done. And that hexagon sort of goes through some of that process.
Right. Thank you, Matthew. Any questions? Oh, well sold. Thank you.
Oh, right, that's it.
Oh, it was all Emma's work, wasn't it, Matthew?
It was, absolutely.
All right.
Please, if any questions do come out subsequently, once people have had a chance to think about it, please let Emma know. We want to try and sort of foster these conversations and move, as I say, from that transactional to strategic, because we are acutely aware of affordability issues in some of this.
So just remind me, your renewal date is 1
November, I think.
1 November?
Yeah.
And just bearing in mind that today is the middle of September, we're unlikely to make significant progress on this issue before 1 November because of the amount of work required. Is that what you're saying, Matthew?
Yep, I think that's reasonable, and that phrase "act in haste, repent at leisure." I think it's, I'll put it like this: I don't want to be coming to present to you in 8 months' time, let's say, when there's a property that has been destroyed or lost in an event, and you've got a big excess, and I have to explain to you why you've got a big excess. Because in hindsight, unless there is a structure underneath that and how that's been arrived at and the savings and the implications and the increased exposure has been understood, that's never going to look in hindsight as a good decision. It's far better to take the time, understand everything, go through it, understand what the exposures are financially or otherwise, and then absolutely get it correct and have a focused approach to the purchase of the insurance as that risk transfer component.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you, Matthew and Emma.
Thank
So,
you very much.
concluding comments?
I suppose that, I mean, we have to negotiate the insurance before the next council meeting, so.
Do we? When is our meeting? I mean, of course we do.
Yeah, the next, would you bring, because it's within our delegation levels. So, but it'd probably be next year when we actually look at our assets and say, okay, which assets do we think we don't need to insure or have a higher excess, and it'll be a lot that time without Three Waters.
And things, yeah, exactly. Things will have changed.
Yeah. I'm just looking at our next meeting is on the 7th of December, which is well past that magical renewal date. Yeah. But I think I like the idea of once we might have a little bit of clue about by then, a little bit of a clue about Three Waters. And then I think we probably need a bit of a work program, Sue, no pressure, right? With Emma and Matthew, right? To work through, how we actually would go through that hexagon, because it requires lots of discussion, lots of information before you can actually land an appropriate place.
May I add something to that, please, Phil?
Absolutely.
We are also, one of the things we're also aware of, and please don't take this the wrong way, smaller councils, I am assuming, it's a generalised statement, smaller councils may well have a resourcing issue around doing some of this stuff. I don't know of too many small councils who have a dedicated risk management person whose sole responsibility is doing that. It normally tends to end up with somebody who's got about 3 other jobs to do. We're currently working on a solution to that, particularly for the smaller provincial councils within New Zealand, that hopefully can help. So we'll get back to you with that, probably post-renewal, to be honest with you. But we can't stand here and say, we want you to go from transactional to strategic, but not try and help you in that process. So we're working something on that for the moment.
Okay, thank you for that, Matthew.
Excellent.
All righties. Okay. Any further comments on our insurance renewal update report from Sue? No others?
Just a point of clarification, if I may, Mr. Chair. Sue, did you say earlier on that our asset register is consistently being updated and where it hasn't been accurate in the past, you're much more over it now?
Yes.
Yep.
And we have a fixed assets accountant that for any new assets that we construct, we make sure that they're on the list and exactly what they are, and how much they should be insured for. But what we have noticed this time, because we've had time to look at the past list, that some things are missing and haven't been noted. So we didn't have that good systems during the time of the commissioners, and things have been left off. So that's why I say, whether we keep Three Waters or we don't, we need to do a better job understanding what assets we've got on the insurance register. And obviously we're updating that. We've got better asset management this year. We're going to have our fixed, so our fixed assets aligning with that. So we are getting better records, but the insurance records aren't that good.
So supplementary, if I may, so to that, have we had in recent times any claim against an asset that actually hasn't been covered?
No, not that I understand. I mean, the most recent ones would be for where it might have been water and sewer assets, and I think we're still negotiating the list for that with the insurance company. Amanda had put that together.
And they're underground though, aren't they?
They're above the ground.
Above the ground.
Some of them, they'll be able to go electrical issues at plants.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick clarification on when you insure it, do you actually give them any list of assets or just give you a total amount?
List of assets.
Yeah.
So you can look at that list of assets which you gave in the last insurance.
Yes, but what I'm saying is some of the information on it, that's past information, is not as robust as it could be.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, no further discussion. Can I have a mover for the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Ash. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mike. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Is against, carried. Thank you again, Matthew. Thank you, Emma, and I might see you sometime soon.
Probably. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we've got 4 minutes before our agreed break time. Can we go back to item 3.13 on page 185?
Yes, so this is me.
Yep.
And regulatory compliance. And I suppose the only thing I'll point out to you is about procurement, that we aren't in compliance with some of our procurement policies, and some of that is to do with the staff shortages.
Yep.
And we haven't put them out to tender because there's no point, there's no one out there to.
Okay.
That's the key thing, and you can see building consents down, they were up a little bit this next month, but still down. Same for resource consents, they're only slightly down. So just a reflection of the market out there.
Thank you. Any questions? No. I just got a comment. So I wonder, as we roll into a new year, please don't shoot me, can we have a rolling 12 months rather than 12? Because one of the graphs, that one there, we've got, so it's got hardly any data on it. It'd be nice if we could actually look back over the last 11 months plus. If it's possible, if it's not possible, don't die in the ditch. Okay? Don't drown in the ditch, I should say.
Okay.
All right. Just on parks and open spaces, page 5, non-compliance, Aranga, Manganui Bluff, holding tank, whatever. I visited the site, and I think I was told by Annie last time that it's being demolished. It looks like here it says that it is still to the code, the physical building. So can you clarify on that?
We have included that as our schedule of demolition.
Thank you.
So it's just the summer is approaching, so it'll be good if you sort it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Can I have a mover for the recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Mike. Second, Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. Past audit recommendations.
So
thank you.
So this is basically past recommendations on the audits, and just up to date with how we're going on them. A lot of the Deloitte ones have been sorted. Because of the fact that obviously we've got auditors in tow with us at the moment.
Okay, can I just make a comment here? Some other things are in progress and the dates need to be updated, like on page 96, in progress, completion deferred until the end of June 23. Just there's a number of those, if we tidy those up for next time, that would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Any other comments? No. Right. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. And on that basis,
Doing well.
yeah. Yes, yeah, Craig, or not, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried, and we will adjourn for lunch and be back. And how long do we want, team?
Bernard, I'm just gonna kick you off the WebEx and I will let you know when to join. Is that okay? I'm just.
Yep, that's fine. Yep.
Sorry then. Thank you. Bye.
Right, let's reconvene this meeting, and can I have a mover to move into public excluded, please?
Yeah, I'll move.
Move, second.
Sorry, who's? Councillor Howard.
Councillor Howard. Councillor Ash.
I'll probably, it's
Right. Now, what I'm going to do now is change the order. We'll deal with the staff relations report 1.8.
Sorry, can you just give me one moment?
Yeah.
I'm just going to stop this recording.
Oh, sorry, I've moved too quickly.